All right, let's dive into something pretty crucial in habit building. It's the fourth law of behavior change. Make it satisfying. We're going deep with research and examples straight from the fourth law. I think it's really going to shift how you think about lasting change.
You know, it's fascinating. This idea really flips the script on that whole classic willpower thing. Instead of forcing ourselves, it's about tapping into how our brains are wired to reward us, using it to our advantage.
Okay, I like that. Let's break it down. The book starts with this really interesting story about a hand washing experiment happened in Karachi. They found that even with the knowledge, people weren't consistently washing their hands.
Right. So researchers wanted to make it more appealing. They teamed up with Procter& and Gamble, the idea. Provide soap that was actually nice to use, foamy, fragrant, the whole bit.
I'm guessing that made a difference.
Oh, yeah, hand washing rates went way up.
That's wild. So by making the soap enjoyable, they were using that immediate satisfaction thing, making it stick. I've even tried switching up my workout playlist to make exercise more fun. Does that fit in here too?
Absolutely. It's all about the brain. We're programmed to want rewards now, not later. Think about our ancestors, right? Finding food right away meant survival, not waiting around.
Makes sense. Explains the sugary snack versus the healthy one. Instant gratification usually wins. So how do we bridge that gap? Immediate versus those big goals down the line.
Yeah, well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The book talks about this cardinal rule of behavior change. Basically, what gets rewarded right away, we repeat, and what gets punished, we avoid.
I can see that. Have you ever given up on a hobby? Maybe trying guitar and it just felt too hard at the start.
Exactly. Without those little wins early on, it's so easy to lose steam. And that clash between wanting instant rewards and, well, most things in our modern world where the payoff is delayed, that's where we get stuck.
It's true. Saving, building a business, getting healthier, it all takes time.
Yeah. And it's not just good habits that work this way. There's this French proverb, the sweeter the first fruit of a habit, the more bitter are its later fruits.
Meaning, those things that feel good now, procrastination, maybe eating things we know aren't great for us, those can have consequences down the line.
I see how this goes beyond just good habits. It's understanding how they all work, right?
Exactly. And when we get that, we can use it to make our brains work for us.
No, we're talking. But how do we do that?
One way, add a little fun to the good stuff. Say you're saving money. Every time you skip that unnecessary thing, put that amount into a fun jar, for something you really want.
I like that. Like a mini reward for a good choice. I'm already thinking how to use that. What else?
Visuals.
Yeah.
Think like a progress bar on a video game. Something simple, even moving paper clips from one jar to another as you finish tasks.
Speaking of visuals, the book talks about Trent Dursmid. He was a stockbroker and used this paperclip strategy to get more sales calls done.
Yeah. He started his day with 2 jars, one full of clips for his call goal, the other empty. Each call, he'd move a clip. You can literally see yourself getting closer to the goal. And he became super successful. It's such a simple but cool idea, almost like a game, right? You want to keep going to see those clips pile up.
That's visual feedback for you. Turns abstract goals into something real you can track. And when you see it, you feel like you're achieving something. Very satisfying.
So we're making things enjoyable, tracking, almost like celebrating little wins along the way.
Yes, celebrating those small wins is huge. It's easy to get lost in the big picture and forget to acknowledge those little victories.
Think about your own goals.
Mm.
What are those smaller points you could celebrate? Finishing a chapter, hitting a new personal best at the gym, or just staying on track with your food for a whole week. Those are wins.
For sure, when we celebrate, we reinforce the good behavior. It makes it stick. But before we go crazy with measuring, there's this crucial thing the book brings up, watching out for the wrong metrics.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
It's easy to get fixated on what's easy to measure, right? But sometimes those don't really show us the behavior we're trying to change.
They had this example in the book about a restaurant, right? If they only cared about daily money, but not if customers were happy.
Exactly. That could lead to problems down the line.
So it's about those actions that get us results, not just the result itself.
Yeah.
I got it.
And this leads us to something called the habit contract.
Oh, that sounds interesting. What's that?
It's a way to add a little consequence if you slip up with bad habits, a public commitment with specific things that happen if you don't follow through.
And I remember they talked about Brian Harris, an entrepreneur. He used this to lose weight, outlined everything, even what happened if he didn't stick to it, even had his wife and trainer sign it.
That's what's great about it. Uses social pressure to keep us on track. We're less likely to break a promise if others know about it. Have you ever tried something like that?
I haven't. But
Yeah.
this whole conversation is making me rethink how I approach this stuff. It's not just about willpower, it's how our brains work and making a system that helps, right?
Exactly. And we haven't even talked about flipping the fourth law, making those bad habits unenjoyable.
All right, now I'm really hooked. Tell me more.
Well, it's all about adding a bit of immediate pain to those bad habits.
So the opposite of rewarding good behavior. We make bad behavior have consequences right away.
Precisely. But there are some rules. The punishment, it has to fit the behavior.
So, like if I'm trying to stop shopping online so much, maybe each time I overspend, I donate to a charity I like.
You got it. The consequence has to mean something, and it has to happen now.
Makes sense. If it's way off in the future, it's easier to ignore. The book mentioned seatbelt laws. Before they were enforced, lots of people didn't wear them, even though they knew better.
Perfect example. Adding that immediate consequence is huge for changing behavior. But what about when we slip up, which we all do? How do we get back on track?
Oh, that's a great question. I know that's something I struggle with. One mistake, and it feels like the whole thing is ruined.
Yeah, happens to all of us. But the book really stresses getting back on track quickly after setbacks. It's about acknowledging it without letting it ruin everything. Never miss twice is a good rule to follow.
That's much nicer than how I usually think about it.
Remember, it's about consistency over time.
And that brings us back to habit tracking.
Ah, yes. Habit tracking. Total game changer. By writing things down, we can actually see our progress, which feels good and keeps us going.
I like that. It's like a physical reminder of how far you've come. The book says even Benjamin Franklin was into habit tracking. Used a little booklet for his goals.
See, even way back then, people got it. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, he does something similar. Marks an X on the calendar. Every day he writes jokes. Simple, but it works.
Pretty cool.
Makes any habit a little like a game. And all those X's or check marks, they add up. You feel that momentum.
Okay, you've convinced me. Give me the highlights. What are the benefits of habit tracking?
First, it makes the habit obvious. You're always reminded because you're writing it down.
You know what they say, what gets measured gets managed?
Right. Second, it makes it more attractive. Seeing those marks build up, it's visual, it's motivating.
You're literally seeing your progress.
More.
God, feel good.
And third, it makes it more satisfying. You feel a sense of accomplishment. It reinforces those good feelings you get from doing the habit.
I can see how that helps people stick with it. Is there anything we should avoid when we're tracking?
Great question. Make sure you're measuring the right thing. We touched on this earlier. Sometimes we focus on things that don't show the real progress.
The restaurant example, right? They were just looking at money, not the whole picture.
Exactly. The thing you're tracking needs to match up with your big goals. Otherwise, you might be focusing on the wrong things.
So it's not just about tracking any old thing. It's got to be the stuff that actually matters.
You got it. It's about seeing the big picture and choosing what's going to get you where you want to be.
This is making me want to grab a notebook and start tracking everything. Anything else to watch out for before I do that?
Well, be careful not to get so focused on the tracking itself that you lose sight of what it's all for.
Like being so busy counting calories that you forget to actually enjoy your food.
Yeah. Habit tracking is a tool to help you, not the goal itself.
Right. It's got to be a balance between seeing your progress
Ah.
and remembering why you're doing it in the first place.
Absolutely. If you start to feel bogged down with all the tracking, it's probably time to rethink what you're doing.
Okay, I'm really realizing there's a lot more to habit building than I thought. This make it satisfying idea is eye-opening.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
Well, I'm ready to keep going. But before we do, can we talk a bit more about that habit contract thing?
Oh yeah, the habit contract. That's a powerful way to use social pressure to stick with good habits and make it much harder to give in to those bad ones.
So it's like those consequences we talked about earlier, but even more real.
Exactly. It's a public declaration. You lay it all out, your goals, and what happens if you don't meet them.
Brian Harris, remember, he used one for his weight loss. Phases, daily habits, even penalties if he didn't stick to it.
He even got his wife and trainer to sign it. That's accountability for you.
It's amazing how motivating it is when you know people are rooting for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're social creatures. We care what others think.
This is all so helpful. It's not about willpower. It's about using psychology to make changes that stick.
That's the key. Figure out the rules of the game, so to speak, and then make them work for you.
Speaking of which, the book has this cheat sheet, right? Summarizes the main points.
Yes. You can find a printable one at atomichabits.com/cheat sheet.
Perfect. I'm definitely checking that out. This has been really insightful. I'm already thinking about how to apply this to my own life.
That's great.
This has been awesome. Clearly, there's a lot more to uncover.
Oh, yeah. We've just started exploring the world of habits. There's so much more.
So we've covered a ton how our brains work, making good habits enjoyable, even adding a little, I guess you could say, discomfort to those bad ones. This make it satisfying thing really has layers.
It does. This all makes me think about reflection. Like, how much are we thinking about the habits we're trying to build?
Oh, that's interesting. Tell me more.
Well, I think we need to step back sometimes. Ask ourselves, are these habits really lining up with what we value, what our goals are? Are they helping us build the life we want?
That's so important. It's easy to get caught up in the doing part, the tracking, the rewards, and forget the why behind it all.
Right. It's like heading out on a trip without knowing where you're going. You might end up somewhere you didn't want to be.
Okay, so how do we make sure we're on the right track, making sure our habits match up with our values?
It starts with really defining those values. What matters most to you? What kind of person do you want to be? What impact do you want to have?
This is getting deep, but I see the connection. If our habits aren't matching up with what we believe in, they're not going to stick, are they?
Exactly. Once you know what you stand for, you can look at your habits. Are they helping you live those values, or are they working against them?
So if, say, I value health, but I'm staying up late on social media, there's a problem there.
For sure. And that's where the fourth law comes in. How can you make those healthy things, sleep, exercise, more enjoyable?
I could try a relaxing bedtime routine, get some workout clothes that I actually like, maybe find a friend to exercise with. So many options.
And that's what I love about this. It's not about taking things away. It's about making the good stuff stick.
I'm starting to see how deep this fourth law goes.
Mm.
It's not a quick fix. It's a whole new way of thinking about building habits.
Yeah.
It's about our psychology, our values, the whole picture.
Yeah, it's about how all these pieces work together and using that to make it work for us.
We've only scratched the surface, right? What else should we talk about before we wrap things up?
I think patience and self-compassion are important here.
Right.
Building habits takes time. It's not a straight line. There are going to be bumps along the way.
Oh, tell me about it. I'm great at starting things, but then a few weeks later, phew, F. It's really discouraging sometimes.
We've all been there. But those bumps, they're normal. It's not about never messing up. It's what you do after.
So that never miss twice thing we talked about.
Exactly. Missed a workout, had a not-so-healthy meal, skipped writing. It's okay. Acknowledge it, learn from it, and get right back to it.
It's more forgiving than I usually am with myself.
It's about the long game.
And that takes us back to habit tracking.
Ah, yes. Habit tracking, it's a game changer. It keeps us going. When we write things down, we can see our progress.
I love that. It's a visual, proof that you're doing the work. I think the book mentioned Ben Franklin was into habit tracking, had a little booklet for his goals.
Right. And he's not alone. Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian, he uses it to stay consistent with his writing, marks an X on the calendar every day he writes jokes.
I love that. So simple but smart.
Turns any habit into a bit of a game. And you see those marks adding up, it makes you want to keep going.
I'm sold. But before I go nuts and start tracking every little thing, any downsides, any traps to watch out for?
Good point. You got to make sure you're tracking the right things. Like we said, sometimes what we measure doesn't show the real progress.
Right, like the restaurant example. They were only looking at the money, not the bigger picture.
Exactly. What you're tracking has to match up with your big goals. If not, you're focused on the wrong stuff.
So, got to pick the metrics that actually matter.
You get it. It's about seeing how it all fits together and choosing what's going to get you where you want to go.
This is all so helpful. I'm really starting to get the whole habit tracking thing.
It's a powerful tool. But like any tool, you got to know how to use it right.
Well said. We talked about habit contracts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using social pressure, making it public. Are there other ways we can use our social circles to help?
That's a great point. The people around us, they have a big impact on our habits.
I've noticed that. If my friends are into healthy stuff, it's easier for me to be healthy too.
Yeah, we're wired to do what other people do. So surrounding yourself with people who support your goals, that's huge.
So if I want to write every day, maybe I should find other writers, join a group.
Exactly. You'll be with people who get it, who understand the challenges, and it's built-in support.
Like a cheerleading squad for your habits.
Right. And it's not just about finding people with the same goals. It's also about where you spend your time, the places you go.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
Think about it. If you're trying to cut back on sugar, hanging out in a bakery every day isn't going to help.
That's a good point. Our environment definitely plays a role.
For sure. So make your environment work for you. Get rid of temptations, have healthy food around, Join a gym that's easy to get to.
Set yourself up for success by making good choices the easier choice.
You got it. This social influence thing makes me think about families, how they affect our habits.
I've definitely noticed that. My family's eating habits have totally rubbed off on me.
It's huge. Family shapes so much what we believe, what we value, how we act. Habits, too.
So how do we make that work for us? Using family to help us build good habits.
Talk to each other, be honest about your goals, and ask for support.
Like if I want to eat healthier, maybe ask my family to cook healthy with me or not bring junk food home.
Exactly. And be understanding of their side of things, too. Try to find compromises.
That's true. Change can be hard for everyone. Got to be patient with each other.
For sure. And sometimes just telling your family your goals can be motivating.
Oh yeah, I get that. Knowing my family's rooting for me makes me want to keep going.
Like built-in accountability right there at home.
Love that. Turning your family into your habit support system.
And that brings up something really important, showing our kids what healthy habits look like.
That's something I think about a lot.
Yeah.
As a parent, I know my kids are always watching.
They are. Kids pick up so much from their surroundings, especially from us.
So if I want them to eat healthy, it's not enough to just tell them. I've shown them I enjoy healthy food too.
Exactly. Kids will copy what they see.
And it's not just food, right? It's reading, exercise, being kind, handling emotions.
Right. When we show them how to do it, we're not just teaching them, we're building a healthy environment for them to grow up in.
That's a great point. It's like making healthy habits a normal part of family life.
And this whole family and social influence thing makes me think about our culture, the bigger picture.
That's an interesting angle. How does culture affect our habits?
Think about it. Culture affects everything. What
Yeah.
we eat, how we spend our time, what we value.
Right. Like in some cultures, big meals late at night are normal, while in others, it's more common to eat smaller portions throughout the day.
Exactly. And those differences can really affect our habits, what we eat, when we sleep, even our health.
So we need to be aware of those cultural influences and decide which habits we want to keep, which ones we might want to change.
Right. It's about balancing our cultural background with what's good for us as individuals.
This is all so interesting. It's like we zoomed out from individual habits to the whole world, and we can see how everything connects.
It's a complex system. And this leads to a really important point, being aware of our habits.
Okay, I'm all for awareness. What should we be paying attention to?
The first thing is to simply notice what habits we already have. We often just go through the day on autopilot, not realizing what we're doing.
I do that all the time, mindlessly scrolling on my phone.
It's so common. But when we see our habits, then we can change them.
So shine a light on those things we do without thinking. Okay, we're aware. Now what?
Ask yourself, why am I doing this? What need is it filling?
So like if I'm always checking email. Maybe it's because I don't want to miss something, or maybe I want people to think I'm important.
Yeah. When we understand why we do things, then we can find better ways to meet those needs.
It's not just breaking bad habits. It's about figuring out what's driving them and finding something better to replace them with.
Right. And, all this talk about awareness makes me think about mindfulness.
I've been hearing a lot about mindfulness lately. What's the connection?
Mindfulness is about being present, right here, right now, without judging yourself, noticing your thoughts, feelings, sensations.
And how does that help us change our habits?
Well, it helps us see our triggers, those things that set off a habit. They can be things around us or even feelings inside us.
So like if I'm stressed, I grab a cookie. Stress is the trigger. The cookie is the habit.
Exactly. Being mindful helps us see those triggers and the habits they cause.
And then we can choose to do something different.
Yes. Instead of reacting without thinking, we can pause, see what's happening, and decide what we want to do.
That's so cool, like taking control back from those automatic things we do.
Exactly. Mindfulness lets us break those cycles and choose what we want to do, stuff that matches our goals.
This has been amazing. We've gone from the science of habits to how people affect us to mindfulness. It's like a whole journey.
A deep dive, for sure. And I think we've covered some really useful stuff.
I agree. But before we finish, let's give our listeners some key things they can start using right away.
Great idea. Let's turn all this into action.
Okay, we've been through a lot. The science behind habits, the psychology, how other people affect us, even mindfulness. It's a lot to process. Let's try to sum it all up. What are the main things people can start using today?
I think one of the biggest things is to make those good habits enjoyable, or at least not so bad. Remember, our brains love instant gratification.
Like that hand washing thing, right?
Right.
Better soap, big results. So If I want to exercise more, maybe I find someone to do it with or find a workout I actually like.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of actually seeing your progress. Even something small like marking off days on a calendar when you stick to the habit, it makes you feel good, keeps you going.
Yeah, that visual thing really helps me, like a physical reminder.
And don't forget about telling other people your goals. Find a friend, join a group, it all helps.
We're definitely social creatures, right? Who we're around makes a big difference.
It does. And remember, this stuff takes time. Be patient with yourself, celebrate those little wins, and don't worry too much about setbacks. They're gonna happen.
It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times, but you get there eventually.
Right. And you don't have to go it alone. Talk to friends, family, maybe even find a coach or someone who's been there.
This has really shown me how important it is to look at habit building as a whole thing. It's not just about forcing yourself, it's understanding yourself, using your environment, and setting yourself up to succeed.
Couldn't have said it better. You know, something that really stuck with me throughout all of this is how important self-awareness is.
Absolutely. Knowing yourself, what motivates you, what sets you off.
Yeah. When you understand your habits, then you can change them. And that awareness, it's something you got to keep working on. It's not just a one-time thing. It's about paying attention to your thoughts, feelings, actions.
Like shining a light on those things we do without thinking. Then we can choose to do something different.
You got it. And that brings us to mindfulness. When we're mindful, we don't just react automatically. We can create space to choose.
So instead of grabbing a cookie when I'm stressed, I can stop. Feel that stress, and then decide what's a better way to handle it.
Exactly. It's about taking charge of your habits instead of letting them run the show.
Love that. It means we can actually change our habits and change our lives.
And remember, it's a journey, not a race. There are going to be ups and downs.
But if we keep going, try different things, and are kind to ourselves along the way, we can make real lasting changes. Changes that match up with who we want to be.
And one last thing I want to leave you with, building habits isn't just about checking things off a list. It's about becoming a better you.
I love that. It's about growing, learning about yourself, and creating a life that feels right, a life that's true to you.
Exactly. So as you start making those changes, remember to be curious, be kind to yourself, and remember how powerful change can be. It all starts with you.
That's a really great way to end this. Thank you so much for sharing all this with us. It's been really eye-opening.
My pleasure. And don't forget, there's a cheat sheet with all the key points. You can find it at atomichabits.com/cheat sheet.
That's awesome. And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into habits. We hope you learned something new and found some tools to help you make those positive changes stick. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep building those amazing habits.